had this intense dark dream where I was being chased and I had to rescue this little girl. Meaning? Okay, so I just woke up from this dark and creepy dream, and I have to talk about it because it's freaking me out. The dream started in a very gloomy and dark atmosphere, like a dark autumn night. There was this girl, maybe 8 to 12 years old, riding her bicycle while talking to her friend on the phone. She was lost, but was supposed to go to her friend's place, which was in some kindergarten or next to a kindergarten. I stepped in to guide her. We were on top of this hill that had stairs leading down, and below the hill there were buildings, etc. She was about to go down when something clicked in my mind. This place felt familiar, and I was sure there was no kindergarten down there, and I saw no kindergarten. I told her, "It's not there, it's on the other side." Then suddenly, on the other side of the stairs, I noticed a man lurking in the shadows. He looked weird, giving off seriously creepy, predatory vibes. I immediately knew he was up to no good. I told the girl to hurry up, we need to go. She locked her bike, of course, but as she was unlocking it, I could see the man coming toward us. I told her to hurry up since there is a man coming, and that's when she started panicking. I got this feeling that this little girl has never sensed or seen any danger in her life. She did not even see the man coming towards us, but started panicking when I told her this. Right as she got on her bike, she began fainting. I was now on full alert. My mission was to get her out of there and bring her to her friends safely. The man kept following us, and I was completely terrified. I tried to wake the girl up while praying to God and the angels to give her strength. I was holding her on the bike and I kept helping her so we can escape. Somehow, I managed to get her to her destination. I locked the gate behind us, thinking we were finally safe. But then, because dreams love to mess with logic, the man just casually went around the gate on the right side, since it didn't fully enclose the area. Here's the weirdest part. He didn't attack or harm us. Instead, he just smiled at me and handed me this black and gold wand or cane. And then, poof, the dream ended. WTF does this all mean? It was so intense and felt like it carried some deep meaning. The atmosphere was so eerie, yet at the end, the man almost seemed like he had a purpose. Was he really a threat, or was he testing me? And what's up with the black and gold cane? Has anyone else had dreams like this? Any interpretations? I need to hear thoughts because this one is haunting me. This was weirdly a very vivid and alive dream too. It felt too real, like I could control myself in a dream. Never had a dream like this. I just wanted to share this. Last year in December, my grandfather passed away. It wasn't sudden, honestly. He fell sick, went to the hospital, was in the ICU for 9 days, and passed away. I wasn't the best granddaughter. In his last 2 years or so, I took him for granted and somewhat ignored him. His death hit me harder than I expected. It came with a lot of guilt, regret, and curiosity about the beyond. In my culture, 11 says after a person dies, his soul remains on earth, floating around close to their home. One night around 1 to 2 a.m., maybe a week after his death, I was writing in my diary in gruesome detail about how his body looked and how it affected me. Even though the air conditioner was on, it got kind of colder and the lamp in my room toppled over on its own. Mind you, the lamp was taped to the wall. I started crying and asked my grandfather to visit me in the morning because I was too scared to talk alone at night. I hadn't seen anything, but I just thought that it was him. On New Year's, 8 days after he died, my dog and I were sitting quietly in the balcony looking at fireworks. Suddenly, my dog jumped up on a chair and stared at a spot on the ceiling like a statue. He didn't stop until I got worried and gave him a treat. He was stunned. I can't remember when, but I also had a dream about my grandfather, where he simply say wearing the clothes he always wore, smiling at me. I clearly remember feeling eerily uncomfortable. Now, none of these are that major to make me believe, but I'd like to think it was him. Especially because all of this happened in a span of 11 days. Nothing ever happened after the ritual on the 12th day that was supposed to liberate his soul. Nothing until this January. I had been cooped up in the house for too long studying for exams. I stayed alone at home all day and basically did nothing but sleep to calm myself down, so my dreams started getting very vivid. He came in one unusual dream where I hugged him too, but it didn't feel significant enough to feel his presence. I think this dream was just a normal one and not a visitation. True experiences with robots, witchcraft, and artificial schizophrenia. I used to live in Harriman, Utah, where this began. I have since then moved to the Gulf Coast where this has followed me. I was 20 years old at the time. It began with my uncle finding a camera drilled through a hole in the ceiling and telling me about it. Weeks later, my cousin had seen an old man in the hallways downstairs. My aunt, who was quick to defuse the situation, convinced the other kids that my cousin was just dreaming and that this never happened. She is a very bad liar, and I could tell she was trying to change the subject. I have done hard drugs before. That would be enough to discredit anyone. But I have never hallucinated or experienced psychosis. One day months later, I saw someone drilling holes through the ceiling and asked them what the fuck they were doing. It would stop for a while, then they would keep doing it. I kept prodding them like, "Hey dude, I see you, stop doing that. What are you doing here?" Then after a few hours they responded, nothing, if you don't want to die." I was completely amazed at the fact there were people somehow living in the ceiling. Of course, now I am aware it was done with robotics, as it has been shown to me in person since then. Anyways, back to my conversation with the newfound people in the walls. I told them, "It's okay, I'm not going to tell on you. This is just fucking crazy, no one would even believe me." Then the conversation went like this. Bro, there is multiple people that live in here, you cannot talk about us, your family will find out. Female voice, "Oh my god, we love you. You are so cute. We love when you're around. The rest of your family is so loud." Me, "Oh my god, that is so sad. You guys live in there. How can I help you? Can you bring us some food and leave it outside?" No one ever took it. Me, after doing that, "Okay, can I have your guy's phone number so you could text me whenever you need something? My family would be pissed if they knew you were here." Proceeds to like 2 hours of them giving me fake numbers and me trying to give them my number. But every time both voices repeated it back to me wrong. Eventually, I found out this is just a way they fuck with people, because later that day, they told me they don't use phones. I proceed to talk to them over the course of months about a lot of things. There were many conversations, but mostly it went like this. Them, "You can't fuck with us. There's been people that have tried to, and they end up dead with their entire family and house burned down." Me, "Why are you like this? Why do you want to kill people?" Girl voice, "We don't know why we're like this. We're just natural born killers. We killed our parents. We joined this cult so we could kill people." Me, "How can you have all these skills and be homeless? How do you afford all these cameras?" Them, "We just use this house to sleep in when we get tired of sleeping in the car. We spy on people for fun and get paid to do this." Me, "Who pays you?" Everyone and no one. We also steal stuff no one notices missing, or loot houses once we kill the entire family that lives there. Other voice, "We see some fucked up shit, mostly domestic violence. Saw a guy get a bottle broken on his face. We aren't the ones that watch the kiddie porn people. We're not in charge of that." Are there any other groups like you? Them, "There's definitely one other group that could take us down, but they haven't done it yet. We pissed off some people, and eventually they will get us, but for now we're chilling." You guys are really homeless? Them, "No, we have a nice apartment with a washing machine and everything. We make way more than you ever could." Me, a week later, asking the same question. Me, "You guys are really homeless?" Them, "Of course we're homeless. Why do you think we live in your fucking ceiling? You're so stupid." I start to cry. I had been doing every single weird favor and request they had given me for weeks now, and I thought they were my friends. I really have to stress I was completely new to this form of harassment, so I was spending multiple hours doing every exhausting thing they asked for, and would end up looking like a crying lunatic multiple times a day. I was very alone at the time, and still am. They made me jerk off for them so they could watch while they were fucking. They asked me to put stuff on for them on the TV, and asking to change the episode every 2 minutes. They asked for a bunch of food that they never ate. They would always ask for it in a frantic way that left me exhausted by the time I was done with everything. They would say, "Okay, just this one more thing," which would be the 1,000th they had said that. They would tell me that I'm gross and that no one actually wanted to see me jerk off. They just liked to make fun of me. They told me the nastiest, most hurtful things anyone has ever told me. It was torture that was designed exactly for me. They told me how they would cut me open and rape me, and that they would make me watch while they tortured my 8-year-old cousins. Then they asked if I would rather come back as a centipede or a cockroach in the next life, and they could control which one. One time during one of these sessions, I ran up to the kitchen and started cutting myself with a knife, and they just laughed. Me, "Why would you do that to me? I've done everything to be nice to you guys. I thought you guys liked me." Them, "We don't like you. We hate your fucking guts. We hate everything you stand for. You disgust us. We would never be your friend, you small-dicked loser." I start crying again. Me, "Well, even if you think that, I still think you're my friend, and I would never say that about you." Them, "Dude, what the fuck is wrong with him?" I continue to cry. Silence till the next day. Them, "I think he's seeing it. He keeps looking at it." Finally, on my bedroom ceiling, I see the message carved into the ceiling drywall, which reads, "We are a cult that kills people. If you ignore us, we go away. We say we are leaving when people discover us and they forget about us." I start crying again, just because of how creepy the message looked, and also because I thought it was so tragic how they had to live like that, and also that I could never talk to them in real life. I was so lonely, even talking to murderers was a major improvement to my life at that point. Eventually, the psychological damage they caused made my family notice something was wrong. And then one day when I saw the old man downstairs, the same one my cousin had described seeing, I came running upstairs screaming. I told them everything that was happening, and obviously they thought I was on drugs. They got really angry at me and kept asking what drugs I was on. I was in shock for the rest of the night, sweating and wide-eyed. I have never been that scared in my life. I thought that now that I had seen someone's face, I was going to die now. I keep trying to convince my dad and aunt everything was real, and the people in the walls have always been here, that it was their camera they had found in my cousin's room, and they just kept asking me what I took. A thing that kept bothering me was they never took me serious, and they just laughed it off. My dad is a better liar than my aunt, so I could tell something was off when she reacted the way she did. I was very angry and didn't try to argue further because their minds were made up already. My aunt kept telling me to go calm down and put headphones on. Now I see that as advice of someone who had gone through this before. My dad, the genius, never believed me. I later asked him about it in a more calm setting, but he would always deflect. A few months after this, I was talking to my aunt, and I was like, "You know there's people here, right?" To which she said, "I thought we agreed we aren't going to talk about that." She had known the whole time. At this point, I knew she had known about it, but my father was such a good liar, I was convinced he was oblivious. Later, the voices coming from the wall told me they had already taught my dad a lesson in person, and that's why he didn't say anything either. They had also said they just did hypnotism while he slept. Either way, I had already known not to trust anything the voices said at this point. I have to stress that my new friends in the walls were the only people I talked to outside of work for 6 months. Before that, I was severely isolated too. One day, 6 months into this experience, they told me, "This is the night you die, so get ready." 3 people came into my room effortlessly and silently in hazmat suits, waving guns and knives at me, and just sat at the foot of the bed where my cousin was sleeping. All they did was stare. None of the people in the room talked to me, only the voices from the ceiling saying, "This is what happens to people that fuck with us. Do you really want your whole family to die right now?" I basically told them fuck no, and they were like, "That's okay. We already knew you didn't want this, but just know if you ever talk about us again, we will come in and do this for real." I was so happy when they left the room that I had a whole new lease on life. I was depressed and lonely for so long, and for the first time I felt happy to be alive and have the gift of life. They kept intimidating me for a half hour after that by just sitting at the foot of our beds. I wanted my cousin to wake up so he could see this and possibly yell for help. I was not going to yell as I was under deep hypnosis already and had been trained not to talk or move. I also thought that another witness to this would make my two parental figures believe me. I desperately craved my family's approval, and I was tired of being called crazy by the ones I loved. Then, just as quiet as they entered, they exited from the door and windows. The next day they told me, "Darren, we think you are a great person, and we would love to be your friend, but we can't keep talking to you. We wanted you to hate our guts, but you just keep being nice to us, and we didn't know what to do. Please leave this house, move to Florida. We know you'll have a great life if you do." I talked to them a little bit more after that, and got in the same sort of fights, ones where they said they hated me and wanted to kill me. But deep down, I truly question if they actually do. I moved to the Gulf Coast now, and just like they predicted, I have a much better life. They would one day visit me at my new house again, and described some of how it all works and showed me some of the technology that they use. I still spend some days crying, but most days I don't. I sometimes listen for the voices, but they never were quite like they were at that house. The last few months the voices have came back. I am 26 now, and that is what made me want to share my story here. Paranormal sightings from my work's back warehouse. Human-sounding noises, knocks, footfalls, scuffs. So I talked about something similar to this a while back here, and it got some attention, so I figured I would talk about another paranormal experience. For context, I work at Alco Clothing Outlet. I feel comfortable dropping the company name now on account of the location I work at, filing for bankruptcy. And the vast majority of the location is hosted by an extensive back warehouse, taking up about 70% of the entire building. I work as a cleaner part-time, so it's rare I have to go back there for very long. But the majority of the stories I have stem from said back warehouse. Most importantly, this story is not mine. One of the store's cashiers, an older woman, told it to my manager, who told it to me the same day she heard about it. But several of my coworkers claim to have witnessed this same thing. Anyways, as for the story and why I bring this up. While she was on the main floor, my coworker, the cashier, claims she has heard sporadic and heavy footsteps on the roof of the building, easily some dozen feet above us and made of metal and concrete. As far as I'm aware, nothing like this has ever happened before. Not to this extent, especially since there was no maintenance scheduled for that day, and if there was, the roof would have had nothing to do with it, much less the section over the main floor. The main reason I'm inclined to even bring this up or believe it is because of another one of my personal experiences. My shift was cut an hour short one day because the manager on duty needed someone to be cut from the schedule due to it being so slow that particular day. But in order to stave off boredom, since I do not know how to drive, and my ride wouldn't be able to get me for another hour or so, I decided to wander into the back warehouse to call one of my buddies on the phone, since the lights were off, and I was certain the last of the main back warehouse workers had gone home for the day as well, because who the hell works in the dark? As I got nearer the janitor's closet to put the last of my supplies away for the day, I heard what was undeniably, to me at least, sounded like the scuff of a sneaker on tile floor, hardly 3 feet beside me. It gave me enough pause to swivel my head around and skedaddle back to the safety of the main floor's break room. Mind you, this scuff was maybe 15 to 20 feet away from the spot where I saw a shadow figure weeks prior. Finally, since I feel it's partially relevant here, and probably doesn't warrant its own conversation, many of my coworkers once again claim to regularly hear knocking from the main wall, separating the lit floor and the dark warehouse. The only wall without any kind of window, gate, or door. Though that one could easily be explained away in my mind. Does anyone think this could at all be related to the tall figure that ducked out of view that I'd mentioned in a prior confession? Or if it's even paranormal at all? I'd love a second opinion from anybody who doesn't work in that building. Someone is following me? So I haven't had too many strange experiences that I can't explain, but this is one that I'm constantly trying to connect the dots on and make sense of. About a month or two after I had moved into my current apartment, I was sitting in my room with one of my cats scrolling through my phone around 2 o'clock in the morning. Everything was still and dead quiet, except for the sound of a few mice scurrying above me across the ceiling. Suddenly, I heard a very familiar noise. I knew what it was instantly and snapped my head up from my phone to look directly in front of me at my tower fan that had just turned on by itself. And not only did it turn on by itself, it was turned on the highest setting, setting 3. Now mind you, I have the type of fan where you have to click a button to go through each level setting to get to the next. And my fan doesn't remember the last setting it was on once you turn it off. Every time you turn it back on, if to want to get to the higher speeds, you have to click through to them again. Also, I'll add that my fan does have a remote. At first, to rational the situation, I wondered if I had accidentally sat on the remote, but then I remembered that I hadn't unpacked my remote yet, and it was still in a box somewhere in my living room, 2 rooms away. And even if the remote had been in the room with me, it was extremely finicky. Like you had to line it up directly and exactly in front of the fan, and sometimes then it still didn't want to work. I wasn't really terrified, scared, but I was a little freaked out, and so was my cat. And when I got up to turn the fan off and left my room to go sleep on the couch, she followed me out. Now, fast forward to a few days later, when I was telling my mom what had happened that night while we were in the car running errands. When I was done explaining the occurrence, she proceeded to tell me of an experience of hers that had happened 30 years ago, and I was just a baby, maybe a year old. She went on to tell me about how she had just laid me down in my crib and walked away to go into her room where my dad was already. The house was completely silent when all of a sudden they heard a sound that they knew very well. It was the sound of the ceiling fan, and the only reason why they could hear from their room was because it was on the highest setting, and on that setting the fan sped around so fast and so hard that it wobbled and made all kinds of noise, sounding almost as if the fan would rip itself out of the ceiling. Because of this, they never turned it on the highest setting. It just seemed too dangerous, as well as extremely noisy. My mom looked at my dad and then got up to go check on me in the next room, only to confirm what she had already known. The ceiling fan was in fact on, and it was on the highest setting. And if anyone knows how ceiling fans work, you would know that you have to pull the cord and click through the different speed settings in order to get to the next. Which means that you would have to pull the cord 3 times to get to the highest setting. She walked up to me in my crib, and I was still sleeping fast and sounds completely unbothered. She turned the fan off and left the room again and returned to her room where my dad was still laying down. A few moments passed, and then all of a sudden they heard the toilet flush. My mom looked at my dad and asked him if he had heard that, and he replied that he did and told her that if anything else were to happen that night, he was going to leave, LOL, but nothing else occurred. My mom didn't seem to think that our experiences were related in any way. She had only told me the story of her experience because the one I just had in my apartment a few days before had reminded her of hers. I had heard the story once or twice before growing up, but never really thought too much of it until this moment, because my mom had a handful of strange supernatural experiences prior to this happening to me. So I had just brushed her experience off as just being one of the many and didn't recall the story until she retold it to me that day while we ran errands, because it wasn't my experience. It was just another story to me, up until that moment. But now, after my very similar experience, only with it being an electric fan instead of a ceiling fan, did I wonder if they were related in any way and what they could possibly mean and why. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think that these experiences were related at all? And do any of you have any idea why they may have happened? Or by who, what could have caused them? I think it's too much of a coincidence for them not to be related somehow, right? Am I insane? So I spent the weekend in an old town in Texas, doing the wine thing, blah blah. At my suggestion, we did the ghost tour Saturday night. It was super cool and the guide was awesome. Anyways, the weekend was full of wine, so I can't remember the full story, but the guide told us some building burned down a few times, and so they rebuilt with stone. Then they had a cotton gin there, and something in the basement exploded, killing a couple men and an 8-year-old boy. Guide stated that only kids and the parents of said kids get to see that ghost, and he comes up to the kids in the shop that's in that building today and wants them to come play with him. Something like that. As he's pointing at the shop and telling the story, I realize I had bought my daughter, divorced 50-50 custody. She spent the weekend with her dad, a stuffed animal from that shop earlier that day. I was like, oh well, it's just a stupid fucking ghost tour, and a ghost from that long ago isn't going to leave, even if it exists. Guys, I got home last night, give my daughter the toy and put her to bed. Sitting on the couch, eating some food, and someone knocks on the front door 3 times, waits 5 seconds, does it again, waits 5 seconds, does it again. Granted, 5 seconds is a guess, I don't know, but you get the point. I don't answer the door ever, I am paranoid, so I always have my BF do it, watch too much true crime, and it was 11:30 at night. IDKY, but I myself went to go look out the peephole and no one was there. Like, I shit you, not our 2 cats reacted to the knock, and it was so loud it woke my daughter up as well. BF didn't wake because he sleeps heavier than me after a weekend of wine, haha. I was like, okay, this is probably some neighborhood kids fucking with us. You guys, my kid just came to our room crying and terrified and asking to sleep with us, stating she was woken by a dark sound, and I was like, what does that mean? Can you describe it? And she's like sobbing and saying no and begging me to stay with her, and just that it was a terrifying dark sound. What the hell is going on? Am I insane? Would a ghost that's been somewhere so long randomly choose me out of all people to travel home with to my kid? Is it evil? Again, am I insane? I haven't even talked to my BF about this. BC, I'm cuddling the kid and typing this before I go back to our room. And I love him dearly, but he doesn't believe in ghost stuff, haha, so he will just brush it off. What do you all think? I'm honestly getting a little freaked out, but don't want to really trip unless more happens. I need some help. Hello, my name isn't important. And honestly, it's been years since this has happened. I forgot about it mostly, but just recently remembered it happened and did a ton of research and couldn't find a damn thing. So, the core of it is, me and my friend were sitting overlooking a basketball court in a trailer park on top of a big hill with a concrete entrance to a water treatment facility. The entrance was just a hatch with a big 8x8 square of concrete, and it had 2 exhaust pipes about waist high, perfect for sitting on. Me and my best friend and my sister would talk into the night for hours every night for years there, and during the day, it was kind of the base of operations for people outside. Anyways, that's not important, you just wanted to set the scene here. It's 2 to 3 in the morning, and we'd been doing some illegal activity or another, and there was something in the radio about some escaped convict nearby, and we were watching the helicopters overhead, searching in nearby fields as they looked for this man. Suddenly, as I just happened to be looking at a small playground between 2 trailers, a large white object starts out looking almost like it was a cat before it got way too close, way too fast to be anything I'd ever seen. But not so fast, it was just some mess of the light. I know what I saw, and I saw it leap at me. That experience made me scream harder than I've ever screamed. Though horrific burns, stabs, traumatic moments, painful memories, breakups, I've never once in my life felt so defeated and absolutely beaten at a point in my life, and the next moment, it was just gone. I was sat there gasping, shaking harder than a chihuahua, as I tried to gather myself, and my friend looked at me, wide-eyed. I just told him he needed to get home, and I need to get inside, and that whatever I saw, I absolutely did see. After a few years to live down the trauma and mature, I decided to look into it, and honestly, I'm just lost. I have literally no idea what it could have been, or even a kind of paranormal encounter that fits. It almost feels like a hallucination. But this was just such a long and lucid experience that I have a hard time believing I simply conjured it up myself. Anything at all would be appreciated, and I'll answer questions as I can. I am quite busy. Kind of shadow people encounter. 7 years ago, my school friend and I came up with the idea to try bushcraft. One day, we packed a few things. My friend definitely brought a small hatchet and a makeshift stove made from a tin can. We wandered through the forest for a bit. It was mostly a deep coniferous forest, but I had a strange feeling about the place. We eventually found a nice spot surrounded by young pine trees, which formed a natural barrier around us. It wasn't too late in the day, the sun was nearing the horizon, but it was still fairly bright. We unpacked our stuff, and that's when I realized the strange feeling came from the dead silence around us. No birds, not even the rustling of leaves in the wind. As we settled in, my friend started setting up the stove while I began cutting down one of the small trees to build a frame for a shelter. That's when I started feeling chills and an odd coldness. After some time, when I was sweaty and done with cutting, I sat down on the ground among the small pines and froze. No more than 20 meters away, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something dark and unclear moving along the gravel path. I could just make out 4 limbs moving in a strange way, more like human limbs. The upper part of the figure was obscured by the trees. Right at the moment when it was about to step into a clearing where I could have seen it fully, it seemed to dissolve into thin air. I even leaned over to check, but there was nothing there. The area beyond our little grove was a flat clearing, and the thing's pace wasn't fast enough for it to have disappeared into the next tree line, which was about 200 meters away. What was even stranger was that I hadn't heard any sound as it walked, no crunching of gravel or twigs, even though it looked quite heavy just judging by its legs. I called my friend's name in a whisper, and without saying anything, we packed up our stuff in about 20 seconds and left. As we walked away, the forest sound slowly returned. Birds started singing, the trees creaked in the wind, and the chill and goosebumps faded. I asked my friend if he felt the same, and he said yes. We agreed to tell ourselves it was just a moose, but it felt more like we were convincing ourselves than stating the truth. My boyfriend's brother was warning me of his impending death. A few years ago, I started feeling like I was being watched in my room. The strange thing was that it only happened to me. No one else in my family felt anything. As days passed, the feeling got worse. I even started seeing a little boy, around 5 or 6 years old, walking around my room and playing with the soccer balls I had. He would knock them off the shelves or jump from one corner of my room to another. I didn't understand what I was seeing. I only knew that it made me extremely anxious. My mom didn't believe me when I told her what was happening. One day, while I was on FaceTime with my best friend, she suddenly told me that someone was standing behind me. I was terrified, but I thought she was joking until she sent me a screenshot. In the picture, there was a child standing right behind me. I showed the image to my mom, and that's when she finally believed me. She took me to a medium to try to figure out what was going on. The woman told me that the spirit of a young child was warning me that someone close to me was going to pass away soon. She said that I was meant to deliver his farewell messages to his mother and family. At the time, I didn't understand what she meant. Then, the day came. My boyfriend at the time went on a family vacation, and during the trip, his younger brother was caught in a strong ocean current and drowned. After that, the strange activity in my house intensified. But one night, in a dream, I was able to speak with the boy. He told me everything he wanted his mother to know so that she could finally let him rest in peace. I arranged to meet with his mom and told her everything that had happened. I was afraid she would think I was crazy, but instead, she cried and hugged me. She thanked me for bringing her words that made her feel close to her son, words that only the two of them would understand. Unusual childhood awareness, a fascinating experience I cannot explain. Hello everyone, I'd like to share one of the most unusual experiences I had as a child, something that still intrigues me to this day. This experience leaves me with so many questions, and I hope that perhaps someone out there has a similar story, idea, or theory that could shed light on what happened to me. Story. When I was only 2 years old, I experienced something that I can only describe as an incredible moment of complete awareness. I was with my family by a lake, and I clearly remember crouching down to pick up a stone from the ground. My feet were in the water, and I was wearing sandals. At that moment, I saw a man in blue swimming trunks jumping into the water. Then I heard my parents calling my name, and I stood up and turned toward them. I saw them getting ready to take a photo of me, and behind them, I noticed another family, a girl around 8 years old, her father with brown hair, her mother wearing sunglasses, and a boy about 15 years old. I turned to face the camera, and just as the camera shutter clicked, this adult-like consciousness of mine, what I would describe as my present-day awareness, suddenly disappeared. What makes this experience even more fascinating is that in those moments, I heard a voice in my head, my own voice, speaking to me in Bosnian, saying, "Turn around and don't make a fool of yourself." I grew up in Germany, where my parents spoke to me only in German, yet this internal voice was in Bosnian, as if I were addressing myself in a language I fully understood. This happened to me a total of 3 times, once at age 2 and twice at age 3. Each time, I was vividly aware of this inner voice and the scenes around me, but after a few moments, this heightened state of awareness would abruptly vanish, and I'd return to my normal childlike state. One of these moments occurred when I was crying after being scolded by a parent, and again I heard my voice sternly say, "Stop crying, calm down." After that, the awareness disappeared again. The first experience at the lake stands out the most because I have a photograph taken at the exact moment it happened. Every time I look at that photo, I vividly recall this experience as if it happened yesterday. Question: can anyone help me understand what happened? Is this connected to any known phenomena related to awareness, early childhood memory, or even something deeper and more complex that we don't yet fully understand? Has anyone else experienced something similar? I'd greatly appreciate any insights or stories that could help me make sense of this. Thank you for taking the time to read my story. I hope someone out there might have had a similar experience or theory that could shed light on this unusual part of my childhood. I haven't slept in my room in over a year. I'm just going to start off with, I'm sorry if I don't have the right tag. This is my first post here. So, I live in an old farmhouse that was built in 1860, and I moved in many years ago. I was only about 12 years old when we moved in, but when my mom told me I was sleeping upstairs, I immediately got an unsettling feeling without even knowing anything about the house. So I got all my stuff up here, and I slept up here. After about 2 years, I started feeling very uncomfortable in my own room and feeling like I wasn't welcome at exactly 11 o'clock every night. I've even had friends come over that. I haven't said anything about this to and around 11 o'clock without failure. Every single one of them has said they want to leave my room. This started about 2 years ago. I originally had just put it out of my mind and tried to ignore it, but after about 6 months of that, I went to sleep and woke up to an old woman standing over my head. I blinked. I waved my hands in front of me, and she was just standing over my face staring. I watched her fade out of existence over a few minutes with a terrible smile. I didn't go into my room for weeks after that, and then about 3 weeks later, the weird energy was just gone. So I was fine sleeping up here for about a year and a half, and then the weird feeling at 11 o'clock started every night all over again. So I started burning sage as soon as I would feel weird, and this has always helped. And then going downstairs to sleep on the couch. Flashback to about a week ago, I got the weird feeling. I started burning sage, and immediately my sage would not burn. Then it went up in a huge flame and blew out in the opposite direction of my breath, and I watched the flame go to the side. So I went downstairs, and the entire night I saw something peeking around the corner by my stairwell. The fact that I was still seeing things downstairs really worries me because I've always gone down there to get away from the bad energy. Well, this has now been going on since then, and any time I look out of my peripheral vision, I see an all-black figure of a person staring at me. I guess I'm just trying to get some advice on what to do, because I feel like things are escalating and I don't know how to go about fixing it before they go too far. And for anybody that's wondering why I don't sleep upstairs, it's because whenever I feel that feeling, I'm terrified that I'm going to wake up to that old woman standing over my face again. So I just sleep on the couch to make sure I don't have to go through that again. That experience was truly traumatizing, and I would do anything to stay away from whatever it was. Is my new house haunted? If so, what do I do? My boyfriend and I recently moved into a new house about a month ago. I have tried researching the history of the house, and I haven't been able to find much on it. The house has one main floor and a fully done basement. Everyone who has stepped foot in the house has mentioned a dislike for the basement, specifically the back bedroom, the last on the left down the hall, saying the vibes are weird and they feel like they are being watched. And I can't help but agree. Every time I go down there, I feel someone or something is watching me. About 3 weeks ago, we had our first paranormal experience. We both stayed the night there for the first time since buying it. We were sitting in the living room and heard someone coughing from the basement. At first, we wrote it off as the house settling, but every once in a while, we would hear it again, as well as random creaks and groans. Eventually, we decided to go check it out and found that the door in the back was open, which is odd because we keep all the doors closed in the basement all the time. We decided to leave it alone for now and went upstairs to go to bed. That night, my boyfriend woke up screaming, saying someone was in the corner. Nobody was there. After that, neither of us could sleep well, and when we did fall asleep, it was uneasy and fitful. Everything was relatively normal after that, except for the odd creak or groan here or there. But that could be anything, right? We brought our cat as well, and she has been acting completely different than usually. It's like her whole personality has changed, and she is an entirely new cat. I keep finding her peering around corners and staring at me anytime I am alone. Something she has never done before, and it's been making me very uncomfortable. A few nights ago, his parents moved in. They took the upstairs bedroom, and my boyfriend and I went to stay in the basement. Not the uneasy bedroom, but the bedroom it shares a wall with. Before going to bed the first night in the basement, we watched a movie. While watching it, we kept hearing things falling and moving from down the hall. We chose to ignore it until the light started flickering before going out completely. We checked the neighbors, and nobody else had experienced the outage, just us. The power flicked back on after about a minute and never went off again. But after it came back on, the vibes were entirely different. I didn't just feel like I was being watched anymore. I felt like something wanted me gone, wanted me dead. That night I had a very bad night of sleep. My dreams were all hyper-realistic and had graphic, violent ways of me dying, dreams of something grabbing me in the shower, a woman watching us from the ceiling, and a man standing in the corner of the room. When I woke up, my nails were bloody, and I had scratches all over my back and chest. I have never hurt myself in my sleep before. I have always been a peaceful sleeper. Last night I couldn't sleep. My dreams were graphic again. People hurting me, but it was always the same two. A woman and a man. I kept hearing whispers, but when I paused my music or focused on them, the silence would be so loud my ears would ring, until I went back to focusing on anything but the noise. This morning I woke up with the letter T scratched into my chest and my nails bloody again. I kept hearing knocking and rustling from the wall we share with the scary room. I don't know what to do. I don't feel safe in that house. Everyone else feels the presence of something, but that something only seems to target me. Tonight I'm staying with some friends because I need to get out of the house. I feel like the paranoia is killing me. Does anyone have any advice on what is going on or what to do? That was not my husband. Due to me being chronically ill, my husband and I sometimes sleep in separate rooms because he is a wild sleeper, as in tossing, turning, going all through the bed and or pushing me off. Tonight was such a night. About half an hour ago, I heard my husband walk up the stairs saying, "Geez, it's almost morning," and closing the door. The door of our bedroom closes in a very particular way. You have to click it after you close it. So I'm thinking me husband went to bed. I went downstairs to get something to drink and see the light in the kitchen is still on. I think, oh, he forgot to turn off the light. Then I look into the living room. Imagine my surprise seeing that my husband fell asleep on the couch. So I freaked out, which woke him up. He was never upstairs. This is not the first time. A while ago, me and my 1 teen daughters were watching a movie downstairs. My husband was watching TV upstairs. All of a sudden, I hear noise coming from the kitchen. While I look at the kitchen, my daughter says, "That's Dad. He is in the kitchen." I figured she saw him, but later it turns out she did not. She just assumed because of the particular noises. We got a stool where he sits on in the kitchen, which makes a certain sound. My husband never came downstairs. When I just walked back upstairs, I did not like the feeling. It happens all the time that the feeling is off, but it changes room. Both me and my husband see a dark shadow silhouette every now and then. On the stairs, in the living room, etc. I often hear walking up the stairs when I am upstairs myself. When we moved here, we would always see and hear stuff around our house, but later it moved inside. What might be worth mentioning now I come to think of it, when my husband and I got together, he lived in a house which had a demonic presence. I never slept normal in that house. When we got a new home together, I slept like a baby, but there was always activity around that house. That house was in my name. In 2020, we moved here. This house is in both our names. My sleeping here is also bad. Sometimes I'm up for days. In the beginning, there was also activity around the house. Later, it was in the house. My husband even saw a shadowy head/face pop up just a few inches from his face. Totally freaked him out. I'm just realizing this as we speak that in our former home, it was always around the house, and I slept like a baby here. And my sleeping pattern in this house is similar to the demonic one. What I'm also realizing just now is that it always mimics my husband, but never me or one of the kids, which is a little weird now that I think of it. I myself am sensitive to paranormal stuff, and so is my daughter, who assumed my husband was in the kitchen. I say my husband because he is the stepdad to my 2 eldest. I also get touched a lot. That thing is only happening to me. I am the one who hears a lot of weird stuff and see things every once in a while. My husband is the one who sees things a lot instead of hearing it. I have no explanation on how it moved from outside to the inside. Anyone having some insight to all of this? P.S. I am absolutely sure I was awake when I heard my husband came upstairs just yet. P.P.S. I'm sorry for any grammar mistakes, etc. My native tongue is Dutch, not English. Saw this as a premonition? This is something that happened in August of 2020 and has bothered me ever since. It happened only once, and the details have stayed with me to this day. At that time, our family owned a cabin in the mountains 100 miles west of Denver. It was semi-isolated, other cabins nearby, and surrounded by national forest. We rented the cabin as an Airbnb, and I was there frequently to clean between guests. Plus, I visited often on my own to enjoy the nearby wilderness. I was alone in the cabin at this time. One night, after I had been asleep for quite some time, around 2 to 3 a.m., I woke up to get a drink of water. As I entered the kitchen common room, walking towards the refrigerator, I saw from the corner of my eye a figure standing against the far wall of the room, about 16 feet away to my right. It was a log wall, but painted white, so the figure was easy to detect. Its shape was very obvious. Plus, there were large windows and a skylight through which moonlight was shining. The figure was a tallish white man, maybe 6'3". His face was pockmarked with scars, and he had a sharp, angular nose. He was dressed like a 40s-style detective, with a black calf-length trench coat and hat of that era, black pants and shoes. His hands were in the pockets of his coat. He was standing still, feet together and face turned slightly to his right. His eyes were directed to something at about waist height and a few feet in front of him. His expression was, the best I can say, one of bored satisfaction, like he was seeing something he'd seen many times. Disturbed, I told myself it was nothing and went to the nearby refrigerator for water. I then turned to go back to my bedroom and looked to my left this time to check again. Maybe 15 seconds had gone by. The figure remained exactly where I had seen him before. I looked at him for maybe 3 to 4 seconds, then turned on a lamp which lighted the room. Of course, no figure. I returned to bed and slept for a couple of hours until the sun started to rise, and then left for home. All the way and since, I strongly felt that the figure was a premonition of death. At that time, I assumed it was my own death to which it related. I returned to the cabin many times after and saw no figure. We sold the cabin sometime after. 6 months later, in February of 2021, our oldest son, 26, was diagnosed with cancer and died in July 23. Yes, it was a horrible loss, but I'm writing now about what I saw at the cabin. In summary, can anyone validate or disprove what I saw? Was I just imagining? Is there such a thing as a visual premonition? Spirits or entities? From 10 to 13, my family rented a house. It was nice-sized in the suburbs and was built in the mid-50s, I believe. When we moved in, it was already furnished. I was in my first bedroom. I changed rooms 3 times. There was a desk in it, and I was doing homework. I was 10 or 11 at this time. I see out of the corner of my eye a man in black walking slightly behind me. I didn't see him fully. I saw from his shoulder to about his wrist, but he appeared walked out of my peripheral, and when I turned around, there was nothing. Just myself staring back at me in a mirror, but I could feel something was wrong. I tried to go back to my homework, but I felt very uneasy, like something was in my room, that I grabbed my stuff and ran downstairs. The next time I saw something, I was sitting at a table when and out of my peripheral again. I saw something, this time a woman in a dark pink and purple fleece. I know it was a woman, because this time is a wall of her torso and chest, plus the shoulder and arm, but again, it turned and noon was there. Seeing my room, I was not sleeping well. I started to sleepwalk. My neck and back started hurting from sleeping on that bed. Then I also became very ill. I had the stomach flu for a week, but it got so bad. I had to be hospitalized and kept overnight for rehydration and a medication. I think through an IV butane. I was sent to the hospital and had the IV. I stopped throwing up and recovered in pretty much a day. Now when I switched rooms with my mom, it was night. Everyone was asleep, but I had my door open, unlike everyone else. I woke up to a light illuminating the hallway, but at first I wasn't scared. I felt at peace almost. Then it was getting brighter, moving to my room. Once I saw the full thing, I felt my stomach drop. My blood ran cold. It was a big orb of shining light, and it was moving on its own. I don't know why I was so scared, but it was moving towards my room. It was sentient. I know it was because it stopped at my doorframe because I was awake. I was staring at it, and I know it was staring back at me. It was just floating there. But I had a fond response from the first time to now. This was all happening in a year. So I was 11 or maybe just turned 12. I really felt in that moment like my life was in danger. I couldn't bear to look at it anymore. So I pulled the blanket over my head and was just waiting for something to happen. I eventually fell back asleep, and when I woke up it was gone, and everything seemed normal. The next time something happened, my family and I were watching the Eliza Lamb, I hope I spelled her name right, documentary on Netflix. We hadn't finished it when my grandmother and I made a makeshift Ouija board from cardboard paper and a shot glass as the planchette. We actually summoned a spirit, and I believe this because we asked it a question. If the goth guy from the doc killed Eliza, and it said no. The next day we watched the documentary from where we left off, and it says the guy was cleared of suspicion. But my grandmother made a mistake when we were done talking to the ghost. I told her that we need to say goodbye, and she took her fingers off the glass and said goodbye without forcibly moving the glass to goodbye. I told her no, and that we have to hurry to fix it. So we tried to say goodbye the right way, and I thought everything was good. The next day I wake up and the fridge is leaking water. We call the landlord, and he sends a repairman, and they have no idea what is wrong, why the fridge is leaking, how it's leaking, where the leak is originating from, nothing. The leaking eventually stops, but then the walking in the attic starts. I would hear footsteps and rustling in the attic many times throughout the day. I was so sure there was someone in there, I had my aunt go up and look, and no one was there. I would also hear footsteps walking around upstairs even when I was there home alone. Then the landlord wanted to move back in, so we left. And The footsteps, things breaking, seeing entities and partial people, extreme illness, everything all stopped in the house I'm in now. Also forgot to mention earlier that I had to move out of my mom's old room after we switched, because our house would become infested with stink bugs. Winter and summer, there was always stink bugs. Then I eventually found out they were congregating in my room. I pulled back the curtain, and on the back, the entire thing was filled with stink bugs. I never had an infestation like that, and I eventually moved bedrooms again. But if anyone can help me understand what it all was, especially the glowing orb, I would appreciate it. Saw a man beside my bed in an old hacienda. Okay, so I want to preface by saying I've always been a complete skeptic about ghosts and the paranormal before a strange experience I had at the weekend. My boyfriend and I live in Mexico, and we often like to stay at old haciendas here in the Yucatan. We've stayed in about a dozen. We stayed at one over the weekend that was built in the 1850s. Many of them are hundreds of years old, but this was the only place where I had a creepy, eerie feeling even during the day when we were exploring the grounds. In this huge property, we were the only guests along with a Mexican couple and their teen son. We went to bed around 10 p.m., and I often wake up in the middle of the night needing to pee or for water. It's rare that I sleep all the way through the night. I woke up just after 3 a.m., desperate to pee after a dreamless sleep. I turned and looked to my side of the bed about to get up, and there was a man standing beside my bedside just a few paces away from me. We had the air conditioning on, and the light from the air conditioner meant it wasn't completely pitch black in the room. I could see this man in so much detail. Quite handsome, longish hair. I could see all the details of his embroidered jacket pattern and his hat. He was just looking directly at me. I was in such a state of shock, I was essentially frozen stiff with fear, and kept inspecting him for what felt like several minutes, while I had an internal monologue of myself that there must be a logical explanation for what I was seeing. I've never had hallucinations before. He was there a while as I was sitting up in bed, and he was as clear as day. After realizing I could see the wall behind him, he was still there, and there was no explanation. I eventually screamed so loudly, waking up my boyfriend beside me, and the man faded slowly, seemingly also moving upwards. My boyfriend thought I'd woken up from a nightmare, and reassured me that there was nobody in the room. But after explaining I'd woken up to pee, was already awake and alert, and then saw the man. He was pretty freaked out and didn't get back to sleep again. I thought about asking the staff at the hacienda the next day if there had ever been reported sightings, but I didn't want to seem like the crazy foreign lady asking about ghosts. I think it saw me too. So this happened about a year back. I was standing in my balcony around 3 a.m. at night, smoking a cigarette. I was facing the window, and in the window I saw a reflection of something sitting on the rooftop of the building opposite across the street. I turned around and there was nothing. I continued smoking, and as I look up to the roof again, I saw a dark figure sitting on the ledge of the building. It wasn't sitting normal, kind of like how Spider-Man sits on a light pole, like it was hunting for something. I kept looking at it, trying to figure out what it was, and if it's really what I think it is, or am I just sleep deprived. After like half a minute of me staring, I felt like it looked back at me, and I just kept staring at it, and I was completely lost. It was a little dark, but I'm certain this thing had almost human-like features, but in the most fucked up way imaginable. Skin that kind of looked burnt, and I'm sure it didn't have eyeballs, just 2 empty eye sockets. When I realized, I immediately turned my head down. Just a second later, I looked up again, and it was gone. I went inside, drank some water, and I hear a scream coming from somewhere nearby. I went to my balcony again, and the screaming didn't stop. It sounded like a woman, but there were no breaks in the scream. It was a continuous loud scream. Me being an idiot, I went downstairs and started walking towards the sound. The road was dimly lit, and not a soul in sight. I walked and walked. I think about 500 meters in, I realized that the sound was exactly like it was from my balcony. Its sound have been louder, much louder, but it was exactly the same. So I kept walking towards the sound, and I walked for a while and still didn't get any louder. Every once in a while I would forget that I'm walking or even where and just kept walking, and then I would snap back. And at this point I realized I had come quite far from my house to an almost barren area. I started walking back towards my house, and the screaming didn't stop. It was an extremely eerie scream, almost human, but not quite. Human's breath while screaming, but whatever it was, didn't. It's almost like I was drawn towards it. I reached home and opened a can of beer, and after a while went to sleep. I woke the next morning and went to that rooftop to see if I can find something. I first inspected the spot I first saw in the reflection, and then the ledge, and nothing. I used baby powder and a transparent tape to see if I could get a fingerprint or find any cells in the sample, but I found nothing. Now here's the thing. I don't believe in ghosts or paranormal at all. I honestly still don't, because I'm a scientist. But I cannot for the life of me find an explanation for this incident. It never haunts me. I didn't lose any sleep over it, but I still wonder what it could have been. I know I wasn't seeing things. I wasn't drunk or high. The reason I'm sharing this story after a year is because 3 days ago, I was sitting with my friends and we were sharing weird things that we haven't told anyone about, and I shared this incident with them, and they were scared shitless, especially because they know that I'm the kind of guy who laughs at someone who claims they saw a ghost, or even someone who believes in one. A friend told me that she didn't sleep that night after going home, and recommend this subreddit to ask people what they think it was. So, what was it?